Hi everybody. That's quite loud, isn't it? My name is Martin Jones. I'm from the University of Edinburgh, and I'm here to talk about Choreo for the people. We started our journey with WSO2 back in about 2017, 2018. We moved all of our core systems from on-premise, HR, payroll, and finance. We moved from on-premise, where we had point-to-point connections, and that moved to the cloud. So we needed an API solution or an integration solution, and we did some investigation into the market, and we chose WSO2 as our vendor. And we've worked with WSO2 ever since. That project ran until 2022, and after that, WSO2 then said, time to move off your enterprise integrator and WSO2 message broker and the API managed cloud that we were using, and move to a newer product. So we had to decide whether to go for bringing micro integrator in-house or whether to go down the Choreo route. And I'm really glad we chose Choreo. So we started a process to migrate everything that we had built up until that point. We decided to split that into two phases of work. So the first phase was just to move all the APIs. So for our on-premise systems, it was just a straight URL repointing exercise. We got our APIs still connecting to Enterprise Integrator off to the third-party systems. So that went quite smoothly, and I announced that at WSO2Con last year, another fantastic conference. And since then, we have been gradually migrating all of our integrations, their integration layer over to Choreo as well. And that's where we've got more processing and more ETL going on, more translation. So there's been more involved in that, and I think as well because WSO2 message broker was discontinued, we've moved to another messaging system, ActiveMQ. So I think this week and next week we're seeing the last of those integrations being migrated. So that's hopefully by the end of this month we'll be off Enterprise Integrator and WSO2 message broker completely. Deploying on Choreo has been a joy. So that's our journey so far. And to put that into some graphics, you can see this is what we had before on-premise, point-to-point. And this is a real example. This was our finance system. We had 88 satellite applications hanging off that to try and achieve what we wanted to, each of those were different views, different applications that needed access to the data. Some of them were doing like delete from temporary tables, select all from finance, from a target table in finance, and creating their own local copies. There were overnight loads that went in, and it was just, when it came time to upgrade, or an in-place upgrade, took 2 years because all these satellite applications kept going, oh no, hang on a minute, I've got an issue, that I need a new, permission for that, or something else has been knocked out, and it was just impossible to maintain. So that's why we moved to the cloud, and this is where we move to now. So we've got our API sitting in front of that database. We've got an integration layer there. We've got our authentication authorization layer, and then everybody else, they all feed through this one system. So our finance system now gets four upgrades, a minimum of 4 upgrades a year, and they just happen seamlessly. So there's a little bit of a technical solution, I guess, of our journey and why, where we've gone and where we are now. But why for the people? So, you know, I could get up here and give you, I've got a development background. I could get up here and do a developer talk, but why for the people? I gave a presentation in London at the end of last year for WSO2, one of their Oxygenate sessions. And I talked about one of the integrations that we have, which handles payments. So quite crucial. I mean, hundreds of millions of pounds a year being processed. And when I was giving that presentation, or even preparing for that presentation, what struck me is that we have two completely different avenues for taking payments through like technical solutions, two completely different technical solutions. One of them handles everything in real time. It uses messaging, provides immediate feedback to the customer as they're going through that payment journey. The other one is a daily file. It pulls all the payment files from our payment provider and does a daily file load and does reconciliation, does a whole heap of checks which are business related. So one of them is business related, the other one's real time, like user related. And I thought our requirements here, like it's not just loading payments, our requirements have come from the users, from speaking to the users, from speaking to our businesses, from collaborating with people in person. So experiences are better shared. Collaboration is the key. And this is an in-person event. I could stay at home. I could probably get a copy of the slides and look at them at a later date. You know, if people are sharing GitHub repos, you can log into them at any time. But I think being able to, come into a space like this and collaborate with other people is really important. It's those little conversations that you overhear and then suddenly it triggers something, another conversation, and then suddenly you realize might not even be on the slide, but it's a question that's been, maybe rattling around in your head, and suddenly you've got the person who can answer that right in front of you. The university has a policy of, their policy is that we are a campus-based business. We expect people to be on campus. Our students need to be on campus. We have a hybrid working relationship. So I do get more done when I'm working from home, but my days in the office, I collaborate much more. The amount of work, so I think the collaboration, is the key thing. Some days I'm in the office, I'm just walking around with my laptop and seeing, who needs a hand, or overhearing a conversation and then going up and saying, well, hang on a minute, we tried that. Did you know that we've got an API that does this already? Those kind of conversations, just pointing people in the right direction. Collaborating, you get so much more communication speaking to, in person. And even better, while you're speaking to someone in person, there's no pop-ups. You're not getting constantly pinged, emails coming in, direct messages on Teams or Google Chat or wherever it is that you use. Because I find that with online meetings, I get distracted quite easily. So my people that I'm, I guess, are relevant to this, developers, sysadmins, business partners, support staff. Both UOE and WSO2 support staff. As a big shout out to WSO2 support staff. People like Chathra Hashenga especially. And our budget holders, of course. Yeah. So just to back that up, it's not just my opinion. There's a good quote there from Steve Jobs. So how can Choreo help our people? And this is, I watched a presentation by Sanjeeva, and I've seen this a few times in the conference already, so you've probably already seen this workflow. But Choreo is just the infrastructure. Well, I shouldn't say just the infrastructure, it's really good infrastructure. But it gets your code from the developer to the end user. And as part of that journey, you need a production environment so that the end user can connect to that. But if you've got a production environment, you don't want to be releasing straight to production. You want your dev and test environments as well. So you've got this CI/CD workflow, and then you've got your authentication on the end that will authenticate the user and make sure they're not seeing that something they shouldn't. So all that infrastructure, you've got your environments, URLs, deployment workflow. You can write your code in pretty much whatever you want. If anybody's been to any of the developer sessions, you will have seen them writing front ends in like a JavaScript front end, backends in Java, backends in Python, backends in Ballerina, backends in Micro Integrator. So you've got a huge choice of languages that are supported. The other thing which I really love is the logging and analytics. Authentication, all your certificates just handle automatically, and auto-scaling. So at the university, we have key times of the year where there are huge data releases. So I would say exam results, probably a good example, beginning of the academic year. And prior to that beginning of the academic year, you've got all your new timetables coming in. So you've got an annual timetable rollover, and that timetabling creates a lot of churn because all your students have finished one year and they're going into the next year. They're reassigned to different courses. Your student intake is another one with a big churn. And in the UK, we have UCAS, and they place embargoes on when you can announce when students are allowed to, when people are allowed to know what students are going to be at which university. So these, you can imagine marking exams or any of those situations, you've got a whole heap of data which is building and building and building and building every day, just waiting for someone to turn the taps on. So having auto-scaling is fantastic. Before we used it in Anger, I got one of our sysadmins to do some load testing on Choreo, and it just kept auto-scaling, and it just handled the traffic. He kept ramping it up, and he just said the response time just didn't change. It just said, okay, fine. So that's been really good. So yes, all that stuff in orange is that's Choreo. What about our businesses? So, as I mentioned, last year I went to WSO2Con 2024 and heard this guy speak. And he gave a really good presentation, and he was talking about domain-driven design and cell-based architecture. There's a GitHub link there with the information. And I read through it and I thought, yeah, how can we implement this? This sounds like what we should be doing. And how can we implement that at the university? So in Choreo, they have a concept of projects. They call them projects. I would call them business containers. I think for me, project means it's something else. But projects, business containers, whatever you want to call them. So we created a business container for each of our business areas. And that means that all the URLs for those services, web services, APIs, whatever you want to use, they're all meaningful URLs. So it will say, like API research, accommodation, finance receivables, finance payables. And our business will know, our business support users will know where those applications live just from the address. And not only that, but you also get, once you've got it in that business container, you can start building things in parallel. And I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So you saw those business containers, and if you drill inside one, so here's inside one of our finance, inside our finance business container, you can see the different the components within that cell. So we've got receivables, payables, we've got our personal finance service, which is something I hinted at the beginning of this talk. And then we've got links out to other vendor interfaces. So the beauty of this structure is that not only do the URLs give you a location of where that application lives, but all your logging and analytics are contained within that business container as well. So I can look at the logs for the whole container and see a request coming in, an HTTP request coming in. I can see it being offloaded to like an integration component or to another service. And then I can see, it switching between the different services and then making its final exit out to its destination. I can also drill into each individual component and view the logs within that component as well. So I think this is especially important where someone says, we got a payment. Can you tell us, can you find the payload that was sent to the system? Because we think it didn't process and we want to know what's wrong with the payload. Is this something that we need to chase up? So yeah, you've got fantastic logging. I do think there can be some improvements with logging. So we just did one recently. Chathra helped us I think if anyone's ever seen a Java stack trace, it's just lines and lines and lines and lines and lines. If each line had a separate log entry, it became quite difficult to read. So we worked with WSO2 and got that tidied up. And I think speaking to Ashwin, who's our account manager, and who's working with the support team and also with the engineers, I think there are future enhancements with logging as well to make it even more useful. So I mentioned services running in parallel, and we are now seeing the payback from that, from taking this architecture. Last week, all of accommodation services moved from on-premise to cloud-based provider, and there was zero impact to the business. The new cloud-based provider said that we could connect our existing. We had an API in front of that database, and they said, we don't mind if you just want to repoint your database connection to the cloud-based one. We'll give you, a single login for that. So that was it. All of our downstream services, everybody who uses those accommodation APIs, no change for them. So that's a super easy deployment. At the end of, beginning of May, all of our estates applications will be doing the same thing. They're moving from on-premise to a cloud-based provider. They won't give us a database login, so there's a little bit more work with that. But what we've done is we've built, so our on-premise estates is V1. We've built a V2 in parallel, and for UAT and all that sign-off, that's all happening against our version 2. And we can flip between version 1 and version 2 without even having to do a code deployment. It's just a config variable that's held in the environment, and we just change that config variable, and all of a sudden, V1 to V2, you're pointing at the cloud-based solution. So our go live for estates is going to be changing a config variable, and that's a huge one. What else did I mention there? Personal finance service, that's another one, which is, I finished before the conference. We did the UAT. The UAT was all successful. The finance team are trying to thrash the heck out of it this week. This is the one that takes hundreds of millions of pounds in payments, most of them in real time. And that's another one where we're just doing, it'll just be a straight V1 to V2 conversion. So really, really simple switches to go from one system to another. What about our budget holders? So with Choreo, I've already explained that we've shortening the infrastructure, so we don't need to spend all this time on each project setting up the infrastructure. What we do after that is we're trying to make our components as reusable as possible, and this is where that cell-based architecture has been really strong, because people know, oh, this is a finance thing. Oh, well, hang on, we'll go into the finance business container and see if there's an API there that, or a service that does what we want already. And if there is, then no development required. There's a time saving there. If they just need to modify that, something that's there, they can create another version and go through that deployment process like quite simply and quite easily. So the reusability, the other thing I would mention, and this is my next slide, but I don't want to spoil a surprise, is moving to the cloud. Suddenly you are paying, like by default, everything in the cloud is provided on demand. And on demand is probably your most expensive scenario. So if you are thinking of going with Choreo, speak to your account manager, speak to WSO2. We signed a 3-year contract. So we have turned around and worked with WSO2 managers and said, can we move our AWS services to reserved instances so that we can get that cost saving? And you can see this example here. Just over 3 years, out of the box would have been 25 grand. Just moving to reserved instances. So you're just saying to AWS, look, I want this. I'm not going to, I want this for at least 3 years. We're not going away. You got to save that example there is over 63% cheaper. You just pay that up front. But yeah, heck. I've seen other examples where I think we were looking at refining the size of the database that we needed, and again moving to a reserved instance, and the saving was even bigger. So yeah, work with WSO2. I'm going to touch on AI. It is amazing. I use it regularly. Not every day, but I do use it regularly. However, AI won't go and get your business requirements, and that was what I started this talk with, meeting with people in person, getting collaborating, talking, and getting refining your business requirements. And I think it requires a lot of discussion, in person, before you even start trying to, put it on paper. It doesn't know the structure of our teams and how we collaborate together. Our support users, we don't do DevOps. Our support users, a lot of them aren't very technical. They're great with business knowledge and identifying, doing business analysis and seeing data going through. Data is the key. The other thing I would point out is I was asking ChatGPT something the other week. I was just running into an issue and I was trying to solve it. And I think it was trying to tell ChatGPT, I need to write a deployment.toml file to deploy microintegrator onto Choreo. And I'm not seeing it pick up this config. And what am I doing wrong? And ChatGPT just said, mate, my knowledge only goes as far as September 2021. If WSO2 have done this since then, I haven't got a clue. You reach out to them and ask them. And I thought, how much, there's so much has changed since September 2021. So AI is a fantastic tool. I would say its biggest strength is it will give me a framework, or it will definitely point me in the right direction to get to the root of a problem or to the root of a solution. It's a really useful tool, but it's not going to it won't replace people. It's a tool. Identity management is another one I want to quickly touch on. This is all handled out of the box. We use JWT. I think in one of the keynotes this morning, we were talking about JWT authentication. It's very useful, especially for server-to-server connections. Quite quick, very secure. Asgardeo is a great tool. I won't go into much more. Great reviews in the press. And what sort of usage are we looking at? So at the moment, this is actually a very quiet time of the year for us. So we're only doing about just over 5.5 million transactions a month. And I would say those key times of the year, like exam results, student intakes, timetabling rollover, beginning of year, academic year, probably you could double that easily. But I think as a service, there is a huge appetite. Since we've delivered this infrastructure and these services into the university, there's a huge appetite for this stuff. And I think there's a lot of people chafing at the bit to get their hands on it. So to summarize, people drive our business. Collaborating in person yields the clearest requirements. The clearer your requirements are, the clearer the solution will be. Choreo gives you the infrastructure out of the box, just takes that headache away and gives you lots of reporting and analysis tools. It's already helped me identify what I would say is some shift left solutions. So looking at some of the errors that are coming back, you can say, oh yeah, right, I think we can actually handle this in the code. Building reusable integrations is key to our architecture. And especially as you saw, removing the point-to-point integrations is a major win. Security and authentication, logs and analytics. And yeah, that's me. Thank you very much. Yeah.